There's a guy stuck in the elevator shaft. I gotta go get him. I got him.
Yeah. More strategies in the building. Tactical mind, stay ready. Let's go! Yeah. We ain't just talking, we live what we teach. From the breach to the breach, every lesson is elite. Comes tight, shots right, but that's only the start. Cause tactical medicine, man, that's the heart. We the crew you call when the stakes get heavy. Pressure on scene, but the hands stay steady. Rescue mindset, every second we're calculating. Life on the line, no time for hesitating. No, R-A-N-T, yeah, we train with a purpose. Tactical rescue, tactical med, all service. From the team to the street, keep the skills tight. Cause every now and look, it's reps done right. SWAT stack moving, but the medic's in the flow. If a teammate drops, we already know. Tourniquet fast, that way lock, bleeding stop, stabilize, mobilize, evac non-stop. But it ain't just teams, civilians need the knowledge. Every home, every job, more power than a college. Prepare the same fear with some mindset shift. And land brings the tools so your whole crew's equipped. Oh, R-A-N-T, yeah, we train with a purpose. Tactical rescue, tactical med, all service. From the team to the street, keep the skills tight. Cause every line saying, look, it's reps done right. So when the tones drop and the chaos hits, we don't freeze, we adapt, overcome, commit. Brain strategies, where the mission gets well. Train hard, stay sharp. That's the operator
What's going on, everyone? I hope you liked the intro video there. So yes, all of those clips are actually from trainings that we conduct. So to give you guys a little bit of a glimpse into there, we'll probably try to keep it, consistent with starting the videos off that way. But I want to thank everyone for watching. We're going to be diving into one of the most unforgiving windows in tactical medicine, and that is the first 60 seconds after a casualty goes down in a high threat environment. And the thing to really keep in mind here is that tactical medicine, it's not just for cops or medics or military teams. It's really directly relevant to the prepared citizen, because the principles are built around surviving the most common forms of modern violence and trauma. The same life-threatening injuries that are seen in tactical environments, severe bleeding, the airway compromise, chest trauma, they're really all the same injuries a regular person might encounter in a car crash, in a workplace accident, or even some sort of like public space emergency. So, really a prepared citizen doesn't need to be part of a tactical team to benefit from the mindset, situational awareness, which we talk about all the time on here, understanding how violence unfolds, recognizing danger early, and knowing how to, even support professional responders. It all translates directly into everyday life. Tactical medicine teaches people to stay calm under stress, make rapid decisions, and bridge the gap between injury and the arrival of EMS skills. So, those skills can save lives in any community, not just in high threat environments. So let's get into it. And joining us tonight, we have Danny. So he's a frontline police officer. He's an EMT. He works in one of the most violent cities in the country. And when the calls come in, he's often the first set of hands on victims, stabilizing them, long before an ambulance can fight its way through the traffic. And Danny has spent years treating gunshot wounds on sidewalks, calming terrified victims, and really buying precious minutes in neighborhoods where violence is a daily reality. And he's also one of our own. He's a ranch strategies adjunct instructor who's really been with us since the very beginning. So Danny has helped shape the way that we teach the real world street level medicine, and he brings the same like grit and clarity and experience to the classroom that he brings really on every call when he's on duty. And with that, I'm gonna let Danny introduce himself.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Dave Mitchell, police officer in a major city in the country. 17 years of patrol. Been on a major incident response team, civil disorder, hazmat response as an EMT, as a police officer, doing that since 2019. Bike patrol officer, patrolling car, plain clothes, uniform, part of a tactical squad for a couple of years, proactive. Look for guns, drugs, stolen cars, etc. High volume call for service in the city I work in, and a lot of which are shooting, stabbing, trauma related, not just assault related. A lot of them, like Taylor was saying, are just emergencies where bystanders could be helpful. Even patrol officers with a little bit of knowledge could be a force multiplier in a point of wounding. So we'll get into some of that tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that this topic really matters is because, and the reason we chose to do the first 60 seconds is because the first minute is where the most preventable death happens, and it's where I think a lot of rescuers, and we see this all the time, in our real life environments when we're doing training courses, it's where rescuers make the biggest mistakes, and it's not because that they're untrained. It's really just because the environment itself punishes hesitation. You have anything on that?
No, that's absolutely correct. I agree.
Awesome. So, yeah, dude, I would say, so let me ask you, so why would you say, and we kind of just addressed it there briefly for a second, but why would you say that the first, the most important minute of a casualty's life is that first minute in a high threat environment?
That's your point of wounding is going to be where you can have the most impact. Bleeding control, basic airway management, trying to get that casualty to the next higher level of care, whether it's a trauma center nearby. I know where you are, it's mostly rural, and you have to consider that when you're doing your transport. So really, hands-on the patient in that first minute is critical. Anybody, the bystander is now the responder, whether it's just your everyday average person or a police officer, like in our capacity. Just having basic skills can really make a difference between that person bleeding out or expiring prior to getting to definitive care.
Well, dude, that's just it. I think the whole, we get into we stress the first minute of care because the human body itself, it really only has a few ways that it can die fast, and massive hemorrhage is probably the fastest because we know we can bleed out in under a minute, and that's not theory. That's pure physiology. And I think people underestimate how fast is. They think that they're going to have time to set up, to kind of think, to do some coordination, and you don't, because an arterial bleed doesn't care about your plan. It doesn't care about your rank. It doesn't care about your gear. It just does what it does. We watch people kind of get sucked into that trap all the time when we set them up on scenarios.
Absolutely. I like to say a lot of times, like I work in a city urban environment. You work in a mixed environment, combination rural, and even I would say urban in a lot of ways. I'm on scene pretty quickly to a lot of the shootings and stabbings and even vehicle collisions that we respond to. I'm fortunate. I have a lot of trauma centers, like world-renowned trauma centers, pretty accessible. But I've also seen instances where the majority of these events are come as you are. You don't have time to run to the trunk and dig through and look for your IFAC or your aid bag. It's what you have on your person at the point of wounding. Whether you're a police officer responding to an apartment building, you're going to be 3-4 floors up. You're not able to access the things that are in your trunk. When something kicks off, you're going into a domestic, you're going into any situation where something kicks off right then and there. It's what do you have on your person? What skill set do you have? What equipment do you have? What knowledge base? How do you put those together to really save a life?
Yeah. So that's perfect. So in a, we know that tactical environments are extremely dynamic. So
Sure.
What would you say are the things that absolutely just, they have to take place inside that first minute when you're presented with a point of injury, penetrating, injury type situation?
Do you want me to go broad, or do you want me to focus on just more so the tactical environment?
I'm saying, pretty much any point of wounding injury, but the first minute, the first 60 seconds, what do you have to do in that first 60 seconds?
So I'll go broad on it. It doesn't matter if you're off-duty police officer or EMS or just prepared citizen. You're out and about and somebody gets hurt right then and there. I mean, let's go back to the basics. What's the first thing we're going to do? Scene safety, right? Whether that's trying to stop a threat that would cause that injury, whether it's rendering the scene safe, the industrial piece of equipment that shook loose and caused that injury to that person. You want to make sure that scene is safe before you find yourself another victim. And that could be you or somebody else that's responding with good intentions. Once that's done, I mean, bleeding control, like we said, is the number one priority, right? You have to keep the blood in the body. We only have X amount of blood in our bodies. We want to keep that there. So tourniquets, pressure dressings, those are kind of like your number one things at that point before you start moving on to the rest of your march algorithm.
Yeah, well, dude, you're saying, scene safety, and that's it. I think the title that I would give to that would be conduct a threat assessment, and then movement to a survivable space, because we talk all the time about, getting to a cover concealment, and then hitting that first M in March, immediate hemorrhage control, because we see a lot of people get hung up. And primarily, I think we see advanced providers get hung up in that first minute. And they have to realize that first minute is not about advanced medicine. You have to come to the realization that it's truly about buying time so advanced medicine can even happen down the road. If you don't win that first minute, you don't get the second minute.
Correct. Absolutely.
So,
keeping it back to the basics. I mean, it's very often you see, like in school environments, corporate environments, you see people really focus on like, hey, we're going to get our people CPR trained. Great thing. I think that's a phenomenal thing for bystanders to be familiar with. By agency, we have to maintain that for our cert, so we do that. But in reality, what goes hand in hand with that, massive hemorrhage is a huge preventable cause of death that we can have the utmost impact in addressing right then and there. So I think, like, even in the civilian setting, even in the prepared person who's not a first responder per se, I think those two things should go hand in hand. Bleeding control is point number one. Even talking to a lot of like trauma surgeons and advanced providers, they always take it back to the basics. Like, before you even get them to that point where they're on that operating table, you have to keep the blood contained in that body so they can do what they have to do. So the other issues don't come into play, shock and other type of advanced medical issues, like you were saying.
Sure. Well, I think beyond that, what's your thoughts on the first decision a rescuer, and I'm using the term rescuer very intentionally here because I'm not referring to just a designated EMT or paramedic. I'm talking to anyone that finds themselves in the position that they are now suddenly the rescuer.
What do you mean? As far as like, what should they be prepared to do, or
basically within that first 60 seconds, like if you weren't a designated medic, if you weren't the designated EMT, if you weren't the team's medic, and we kind of just hit on that a second ago. You were, I think we both kind of nailed it when you were talking about scene safety, the whole 9 yards. Just kind of reemphasizing that point.
I mean, you're going to assess your patient in that first 60 seconds. I mean, let's be honest. That first round could impact somebody, and they could be deceased. Now, are we going to put a tourniquet on a dead person? No. Right? So you do want to assess your patient, make sure that they are able to communicate with you, you're able to see signs of life, and that's when you're going to start your treatment process. Yeah, and I was, you kind of, I said about threat assessment, but I think you kind of simplified it to the best possible terms. It's the traditional National Registry skill station mantra. The thing that's beaten to us a million times. Is the scene safe? And that question has to be asked by, not only in a tactical environment. I think it's just more in any dynamic environment. The question that has to be posed is, am I in a survivable position? And I think that's it, because that's where the whole decision tree starts. And it's also where we see a lot of people freeze, right? I mean, absolutely. In our scenarios. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's not necessarily get frozen, but their brain just gets stuck. And
if we up the ante and we've done this, you change it from Joe Schmo on the street is now injured to it's a teammate down, and they rush in emotionally, and in that first minute, it can't be about it's not emotional. It's mathematical, because now if you get shot, like you had said, or trapped, or crushed, or asphyxiated, whatever, you've now doubled the problem and have the resources.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You're diverting additional resources when they respond. Now they have to decide who gets the help and who gets the, if you only have a lot of it, like how many people do you work with only carry one tourniquet, if any, right? Like, okay, we got police officers carrying tourniquets, for example. That's great. Most of the time they have one for themselves, which is great, right? You have to keep yourself alive. But now if you rush in emotionally, you don't make sure the scene's safe. It could be anything like we just had an officer get bit by a dog a couple weeks ago. And I mean, a nice chunk out of her arm, and dog came out of nowhere. They thought they had a scene safe type situation, and she got bit, and it bit her in her dominant hand. She couldn't access her weapon. She couldn't defend herself. So now you're dealing with the broad spectrum of multiple things going on at once. You have the original scene, which brought you there, right? Whatever that is. In that case, it was a domestic disturbance. They go to a domestic disturbance. Hey, put your dog away. They think the dog's away. The dog gets loose. So now you have a family fight going on. You have a dog that's loose. Now your arm is now out of the fight. Now what happens? Now her partner has to divert their attention to dispatch that dog. And now you have absolute chaos. What happens after that dog is dispatched? Okay, the dog is done. Now what? Now the family's going to be emotional and enraged. Now we have an officer that's hurt, or a bystander, or whoever else. That's multiple things going on. So additional resources that get there, what are they going to do? Oh, shit, what do I do? Who gets the attention first? We want to limit that with scene safety as much as we can.
Yeah, no, dude, and you had said, you mentioned about how many carry more than one tourniquet. We just did that class, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Forget the carrying one tourniquet. Even if you're just carrying one, having it accessible by both hands. We flagged a couple people with like, hey man, like that's not going to work, and they were shocked of like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. We see it a lot.
I mean, that's I'm sure we're gonna get into several topics on this, and I don't want to get pigeonholed into one and tie us up off the track. That's I'm good for that, so keep me on. But equipment, what you bring with you, where you place that equipment, accessibility is key. You see a lot of people, like even in that tactical space where we're setting up our equipment. Oh, I'm going to the sideways magazines because I can reload faster. Well, if your primary hand or your reload hand, your index hand is out of the fight, now you're in a situation where you need to reload that weapon. You can't access your mags because of where they're placed, right? So there's a lot of things that go into that first 60 seconds, so to speak, where it comes to scene safety. You can't run to the scene safe if you can't access your own equipment, whether that's to dispatch a threat or we'll get into that later. That's fine. But there's a lot of considerations that it's like an ADD moment, a bunch of things coming together at once, and it's like, okay, you have the thoughts, now grab them, organize them, and act. It's a lot, dude.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's talk about TACMED movement for a second. We drill and say a lot about getting off the X, because for any of you out there who may not be aware, that movement is in fact medicine being done. But if you want to going into what that actually means, basically to me, I think that is like, it doesn't mean, treating in the open. You don't treat under fire. You don't treat while becoming a casualty, which you talked on, you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, movement is life, right? Like, you look back to your basic law enforcement training. You go to the academy. I mean, in our academy, we don't move and shoot a whole lot, right? Mm-hmm. And in service, we don't move and shoot a whole lot. So what do we talk about? Training scores. We talk about like things that under stress you revert back, right? You go back to your training. Well, if you're getting shot at, does it make sense to stand out in the open, pull your gun, and hope that you're quicker on the trigger than that guy? No. Action beats reaction. It's the same thing with treating a patient, right? Would it make sense to work on somebody who was just involved in a traffic accident in the middle of a freeway? You stop to help somebody that's in a collision. You're off duty. You're just minding your business. You have your equipment. You're like, hey, I'm ready to be an asset. And, You see something that requires your attention. Does it make sense to stand out in the middle of the open on a freeway and start trying to treat somebody? No, for the same reasons we mentioned, right? So like you said, movement is life. Get them off that proverbial X. It doesn't have to be a tactical environment, but we're going to flip-flop back and forth between tactical and practical, so to speak. Move. Get that person to somewhere safe so you can, collect your thoughts. Now you're doing something, right? Action beats reaction. I see the problem. I need to move that person. Now you're slowing your own momentum, thinking and going, okay, now what? It kind of gives, that's your first step, so to speak, your checkbox to get you into the framework.
Yep. Well, it's funny. I was going to ask you when you said movement is life. I was like, oh, where'd you hear that?
Well, always the student, right? Always the student. Yeah. So just for the audience sake, I mean, I do enjoy teaching with these guys on things that I'm very well versed in. I'm not a shooting instructor. So when these guys put on this class, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to jump in as a student, as I've done several other topics you guys have taught. And it's good to go back to the basics and add to that, and compound that. Check out Range Strategies, man. They put on a pretty diverse skill set of classes, and I've taken it both as an instructor and as a student.
Nah, for sure. Yeah, yes, you have. And no, as far as the movement goes, though, I think one of the things is you have to keep in mind too. Movement is life, like I always preach, but it's also the fact of you don't necessarily need perfect cover. You just need better cover than what you have at the moment. You know, a block wall beats a car beats open ground, a curb, beats being in the open. We've shown how you can get, actual cover from using a curb. And just keeping in your mindset, well, everything is basically going to hell in front of you, and all of a sudden you're tasked with bringing some order or hope to the scene that's unfolding. Every inch of protection buys, if nothing else, at least seconds. And seconds, as we both know, especially in trauma cases, can be life.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so movement is medicine, and that's kind of what we're trying to express clearly. That you have to, there has to be movement in whatever is happening at the time. So when you do actually start treating someone, like if you're faced with a situation where a teammate goes down virtually in front of you, if you're in that hostile situation, when do you actually start getting your hands on them in a treatment mode? Because, as soon as you're in a spot basically where you can work without dying, that's where you got to start.
Sure.
And I think by then you've got maybe 20, 40 seconds left to stop catastrophic bleeding. By the time the incident unfolds, you recognize it, you move. If you're good, that takes 20 seconds. We have routinely gotten people for that to take up to 10 minutes. But
sure.
Yeah, if you're good, hey, 20 seconds. And really that goes into, that's why, you have to stop that bleeding. And that's why tourniquets have to live on the outside of your kit. That's why we practice doing everything one-handed. That's why we train and do our march assessments in the dark, because with situations like this, this goes to my whole thing I preach, constantly on a lot of these videos, is to the fact that, you don't want to react in that situation, because a reaction usually isn't good, but you want to unconsciously respond to it, because in situations like that, if you're thinking, you're already behind the curve. You got to be on autopilot. Yeah.
That goes into mindset too. I mean, mindset is a big piece of it. I know that a lot of these terms get beat up over, just years of doing this type of stuff and trying to be prepared. People, mindset. What does that mean? It means like rehearsing prior to the event. It means going over and visualizing. I mean, as corny as it is, I've had some study partners. We talk about scenarios. We talk about the what ifs. It's nice to be the guy that people rely on at work, where it's like, oh, if something happens, I know Danny's got an extra tourniquet, or he's got an extra magazine, or he's got an extra flashlight. But it's like, okay, we need to start changing the mindset on the front end so that we can all kind of move more efficiently. What happens if I'm out of play? What's my partner going to do? He knows the moves because we talk about it, so to speak.
Well, and it's funny you kind of addressed it too. You've been in the classes where I bring up all the time with my backgrounds with, being FDNY before this, and now, law enforcement. Law enforcement does a horrible job at pre-planning anything. They don't talk things through initially. In New York, when you're dispatched to a box, and or phone alarm, whatever, box alarm, whatever terminology you're using. All of these buildings have been pre-planned so that when you're en route, you get CIDS, they call it, which is the critical incident dispatch system. And basically it tells you, if they give you the address of the building, the dispatcher types that in on the computer in front of the, the fire truck. It's telling you how big the building is, how wide the building is, how many stories the building is, if there are any hazards in the building. It's unreal. And as in the law enforcement world, none of that exists.
No, it sure does.
Kind of wild how that happens. But now, so everybody watching this is Rant Strategies, so we have to address comms. And I'm going to nerd out on you here for a minute because this is one of my things. But if you're you're into it, it's awesome. But the reality is, and the reason I'm so into it is because in any crisis, and really any situation, comms is a cornerstone. And I know we and the overwhelming majority of people who watch this channel are on the same page with that. So let's just address some critical comms principles in a situation like this, because I feel in this, but really in general, comms is misunderstood, but a mission critical aspect of tactical anything really, but definitely tactical medicine. So when a SWAT medic, or again, really any medic, and I'm using that term extremely loosely here as far as medic, any designated medic operating in a non-permissive environment that is treating a teammate, at that point, any radio communication can become a life-preserving tool that can be just as essential as a tourniquet or a chest seal. And the way comms are handled in that moment can determine whether a casualty gets out alive or not. So it also can affect whether the team maintains their momentum and whether the command makes the right decisions while kind of in this pressure cooker.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, man. Going off on my little side quest tangents, that was one of the things that, like, I do remember during a scenario. It's like one of the scenarios, respond to an officer down, you go up, you make your assessment, try and assess your patient from safety before you advance on your patient. And, after you go up, you do your assessments, you're engaged. So now you're engaged with the bad guy, et cetera. What's the one thing that, like, I totally forgot to do? Yeah, man, did you notify radio? No, man, no, I didn't, which is wild because you can't help anybody if you don't have resources coming to you, right? You can do CPR on somebody for however long. If nobody knows you're out there, nobody knows you're there, and now you're exhausted and the patient dies. So communications, like, go back to that basic first aid, go back to that basic CPR class a lot of us are taking, and it's like, what's the first thing you do? Assess your patient and then turn around and go, I need you to call somebody, or, hey, I'm going to put the phone on speaker and call somebody so we get 911 rolling in. Same thing in a tactical environment. If you don't pick up that radio, let people know what you're doing, all the tourniquets in the world aren't going to make a difference.
Yep. And that's, dude, 100%. And I think that would make just the comms aspect alone would make an awesome episode in and of itself right there. So we'll definitely revisit that for sure. That may be Rant Sunday Night Live's episode 3. But I think for now, I'll leave it at, the most basic level of just keeping your comms short, simple, and functional, because obviously this is not the time. And I've gotten on not you, but your department,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we could talk about that all day.
Yeah. I would say, like, I've gotten on your department for doing this, but this is not the time to be giving speeches, especially if your patient is losing blood in the meantime. I also think it's good to learn from mistakes, whether yours or someone else's. It doesn't really matter. So what are the biggest mistakes you would say that you have seen of things happening in that first minute? And even if it's not real world, think of all the literally hundreds of people that we have, trained in our classes, and just think back on that for a second.
As far as, like, communication?
Like, no, just mistakes in general. We kind of talked about the comms, but kind of segueing into that is, like, we know comms is an issue. And again, we're probably gonna do a whole video dedicated to that in and of itself. But now just getting back to the first minute of tactical medicine, mistakes you've seen in that first minute.
Oh, I mean, as corny as it sounds, failing to plan is planning to fail. just going code black. Something happens, and like people that you would think are the people you should look to know what the hell they're doing, completely just shut down. They're like, hey, what do I do? We see this, like, we talk about it during the scenarios because our classes are kind of mixed. So you have like your EMS providers, and then you have your police officers. What does everybody do when shit hits the fan? They go back to the basics, right? They go back to what they know. Police officers are afraid to pick up an aid bag and treat a patient because, oh, no, it's easier for me to take my gun out and just go into an open space because that's what I do. I provide security. So I think it's really just failing to think outside the box and take some kind of action. Did I freeze?
What's up?
I'm frozen on the screen.
Yeah, I can still hear you, but you're frozen. Hopefully it'll catch up. Yeah, so that. So of all the timing for that to happen, I think one of the biggest things there is in that first minute, terminal element. Which, real quick, guys, if you are a ham radio guy, radio enthusiast, the whole bit, in addition to Ranch Strategies channel, check out the @Terminal Elements channel. He's got a bunch of good stuff. Him and I kind of collaborate on some radio related things, and we talk just in generalities because he's a good dude. Make sure you go check out his channel, give it subscribe there as well. But speaking of Danny being frozen in his video, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen that we kind of have hit on a bunch here in that first minute is people freeze, and because some sort of catastrophic sudden event has happened right in front of them, and they fixate on it, and then they start to overthink, and that overthinking is really kind of How about that? You guys got me back now? I don't know what happened there. Thanks for letting us know the audio went down. Should be back up now.
Yeah.
There we go. I think everybody's back now. Good.
Yeah, I lost you there.
So I just wanted. So apparently I had lost audio as well. But just real quick, I want you guys to catch up on that. As far as the first mistake that I had seen when we're doing all this stuff is that, funny, right along with Danny's video, is people freeze. And I think that's the biggest mistake that I see. They fixate and they start to really overthink the problem that they have in front of them, or they try to do perfect medicine in what is really an imperfect environment. And I the first minute is not the time for textbook technique. And I think that the terminal element would probably laugh hysterically and agree with me. And Dan, you said you're a volunteer EMT, so you'll understand this as well. But think of the times, or I think the times when we're doing an intubation in a non-permissive environment, and you're taking that tube and putting it on that person's floor or their carpet or whatever else. If you were a respiratory therapist in the OR, they do it in a sterile field. They would lose their minds. So it's just that thinking that you have to remember that this is not the time for textbook techniques. We have to do everything as right as we can, but what is the greater good? And it's really the time for decisive action, and that to me is is one of the biggest things there is. Like, we've got so many people just vapor lock. Someone needs to take command, and even if it's not the right decision, at least a decision is being made. Danny, you're sideways. I don't know if you can right yourself or not, but
I thought it was the right way. Hold on.
There you go. Yeah, you're getting there.
What?
There, it's a little bit. There we go.
That's pretty much where we're at. Sorry.
So, guys, I think we're back up here. Thanks for letting me know the audio was down. and bringing you guys on the conversation there. So, like Dan, you said, EMT. Your thoughts on that? I think you'll be able to weigh in and give us some good feedback. Terminal Element, you too. Terminal Element, he also does. You guys have heard me say the wildfire deployments. Terminal Element is a wildfire medic as well. So him and I know all about operating in some really austere environments. But so, okay, pure medicine wise, we addressed it here, but just to cement it, priority number one, Danny. What is priority number one in this first 60 seconds?
As far as treatment goes, right?
Yes.
Oh, he's stopping bleeding for sure. I mean, that's like we're going March algorithm and just kind of flowing into that.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to address any life-threatening bleeding. I mean, we're not talking about like a head lack that's bleeding a lot, but it's nope. I'm still good. I'm still able to talk. We're talking about like extremities, arms, legs, anything with an artery. Your junctions, anything that's going to be profusely bleeding and essentially causing somebody to die within those first 60 seconds.
Yep, and that's and with that, yeah, you have blood that's as you know, we say like what's how would you categorize an arterial bleed? If it's pumping or pulling, assume it's arterial. You literally have seconds to make that decision, so that's all you should need to know. And as far as your on that, dude, tourniquet, high and tight, or 2 to 3 inches above the injury. What's your thoughts on that? And then we'll address why.
Listen, I mean, you know me, dude. I always dumb it down to the lowest common denominator because as far as our staff goes, like I'm the least advanced medical provider. So I always go back to the basics and what can you remember in the oh shit moment? Is everybody going to be how many inches above? And I mean, just go high and tight. I've run it by plenty of way higher advanced trauma surgeons than any of us, and everybody's in agreement. 2 to 3 inches is fine. It's ideal. It is the textbook these days. But go high and tight. You can't go wrong. Because what we're seeing too, and I mean, in our city, we have a lot of tourniquet applications that, frankly, just don't need it. And I've probably even done it. But at the end of the day, it's better to place the tourniquet. Do you want to sit there and get into a measuring? You're going to take out your tape measure? No, just go high and tight, keep it moving, move on to the next intervention.
Yeah, buddy, that's my thoughts exactly. I'm a high and tight guy. You know that, especially if you're, when we induce that stress that we do in our classes to you, you're not going to be able to figure out 2 to 3 inches above it. So always just go high and tight. And I think the biggest thing there is, which I constantly preach to people, is if you go as high as you can get it and as tight as you can get it, because we want to crank till the bleeding stops, and pain doesn't matter. Bleeding control does. But if you're going as high as you can get it at the time, if in fact the bleeding doesn't stop and you need to apply a second tourniquet, you've already bought as much real estate as you possibly can. So it goes right under there. So it's perfect. Yeah.
Right. And in the real world, how often, how often are you seeing somebody shot one time? It happens, right? But where I work, people are using 33 round magazines and a Glock with a switch on it, and folks are getting shot a lot. They're still surviving. We have people getting shot 9, 10, 12, 15 times, and they're walking to my police car like, hey, man, can I get a ride to the hospital? But, as far as applying interventions, like you said, if that person's shot, the first injury you find is where you're placing that tourniquet. You just, like you said, just used up all your real estate on that application. So now you found an injury that's even higher and has more of a life threat. You have one tourniquet. Well, that was your shot right there, right?
Yeah. Yep. So. And a terminal
element. You know how I feel about improvising anything. It's like, no, use dedicated equipment until you absolutely can't. So that's
and if you're properly trained and taking it seriously, there's no reason for you to be improvising anything. You should understand the need for it and be carrying the proper gear with you too. And then the terminal element just asks, he's looking at junction tourniquets. What do we carry? And he's narrowing it down to SAM versus North American Rescue. So I don't know what you guys are doing. I can tell you. So I just had my paramedic refresher because I'm due for recert. And here in Maryland, we are actually doing away with junctional tourniquets because we're still doing pelvic binders. And when we were using junctional tourniquets, we were doing SAMs. But I don't know, dude. Maybe just go back to mesh trousers and we'll call it a day because is kind of the be all, solve all, end all. We're getting back to that route anyway.
Full circle.
Full circle. Yeah.
We'll be back to C-spine in no time, dude.
Exactly.
When I said the 2 to 3 inches versus high and tight, I mean, I only got into the tac med space back in like 2013-ish, right? Didn't have any formal training until I think I met you guys in like 15, give or take. But I mean, that's, again, it flip-flops every couple of years, every so often, high and tight versus the 2 to 3 inches. Let's just go with the lesser two evils. Let's just go high and tight. As far as the pelvic binding and the junctional tourniquets, that's out of my wheelhouse. I've never used it. I've never seen one used in the field.
All right. Well, so that was priority 1. So then priority 2, right? We're going along with the March algorithm here. Go with airway.
Open it. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, that could be the best, honest to God answer I have ever heard. You are 100% right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, again, like I just take it always back to basics. It's like positional airway management. More often than not, is going to solve. That person still has life in them. Put them in a position of comfort, or if they're walking and talking, or if they're ambulatory, they're going to put themselves in a position of comfort, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, are you going to take somebody that's shot in the face and leaking blood out of their face? You say, "Hey, buddy, you got to lay down so I can maintain your airway." No, they're going to suffocate and die. If he's like, "Hey, this works for me. This is what's making me breathe," problem solved. Dude,
that is exactly it. No fancy stuff here, right? Just literally, just open it. Maybe instead of just do it, we'll just make a shirt, just open it, and have like the because and you're opening it enough to move air. So the chin lift most likely, but possibly even a jaw thrust, and then the recovery position, which is huge. And there's a whole story that I get into when we were actually doing classes, as you know. But it proves the point beautifully. And then if you have to, doing an airway sweep if that's needed. Yeah. You're not doing surgical airways in the first minute. You're just keeping the tongue off the back of the throat.
Yep. And the blood and whatever other nasty stuff.
100%. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So
as far as that positional airway, I do want to touch on that. That's a great thing that I picked up in one of the classes, which is like it's a triage tool as well. We're really focusing on mass casualty type responses where I'm at because we have a lot of events planned in the next couple of months. Mass casualty is like back on the menu, so to speak. That's a great tool for basic level responders to triage people who otherwise are, I'm not checking their pulse rate and their respiratory rate and are they breathing? Yes. Can we provide an intervention now? Yes. Roll them into the recovery position so when people are coming behind me, they can go, oh, somebody's already checked them out. You know what I mean? Huge.
Yep.
So
all right, that's awesome, dude. So priority 3, which I think is really like priority 2 alpha or priority 2 extended. But then what are we doing? Sticking with airway. I'm going seal the chest.
Oh yeah, my favorite. I go through chest seals like it's nobody's business in the city.
Yeah.
I should really get a reimbursement for that. So it's our number one event. Our number one intervention. So yeah, seal the box. Neck to navel, right? Neck to navel is kind of like the reference point.
Yep.
Circumferential, so front, back, sides, neck to navel, chest seal. On to the next thing.
Dude, very simple. You just nailed it. What to do, right? And honestly. That is another thing, though, that I see getting messed up a lot. Like, how many people have we watched wound pack a chest cavity?
Yeah.
It's like it happens all the time because they're just out of their minds because the stress we put them under. So, that's one of those things. Keep it basic, keep it simple. Don't overthink of it. Basically, if there's a hole between the neck and the belly button, front or back, it gets sealed. It's as easy as that.
Yep. It's either going to work or it won't. But now here's the great debate: vented versus non-vented, or does it matter?
It really doesn't matter.
Agreed.
If you have a choice, sure, get a vented one, but it really doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's another vital step though, because you're preventing the slow collapse of the lung. You're once again, you're buying time before the tension physiology kicks in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just a little side note on that. Responded to a stabbing a couple years ago. I get there, our fire guys are already on scene trying to do what they're trying to do, and they're using like 4x4 gauze to try and seal a chest. What's that doing? It's air is able to permeate that. So what are we doing to prevent? They seem kind of like they thought I was using magic tricks when I took out chest seals, commercial chest seals, and started putting them on this dude. You know, ironically, ultimately we wound up locking up the victim, but that's another story. But so I'm sitting there and I'm just throwing chest seals on these dudes, and like the fire guys were just baffled by it. They're like, oh my gosh, like what are you doing? Like,
well, you're a cop playing with chest seals, and the law enforcement / EMS providers. There are so few of us, which is again the team that we have at Rant. The reason it makes us so good is because we kind of have it from all angles.
Oh, yeah.
But so then the next priority, and you know, this is one that again I talk about all the time, but you know, basically initially I didn't really think this was an issue, but then once I did some deeper education and understanding, because I do like to try to educate myself a lot of times, I realized just how vital it was, and that is about keeping the casualty warm.
Yeah, for sure. That's like an underrated thing, right? You need to be warm in order to induce clotting. My phone is dumping in the bed right now. Hold on.
You're good. Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna try and fix something. Keep doing it.
So the reason I hit basically hypothermia as a major consideration for the, you know, not necessarily within the first 60 seconds, but just outside of that, is because hypothermia kills trauma patients quietly and quickly. People really underestimate it. If you don't protect the casualty from the environment, everything else becomes harder. And it's hard to do in this format, but when we're doing classes, and I actually, you know, it's funny because there are, when the other instructors are kind of teaching the H in the March algorithm, they'll bring me in because they know this is kind of one of my soapbox topics. And I'd like to discuss the fact of, you know, what hypothermia is, the fact that there's been studies done on how many hypothermic patients have been brought into a trauma center. And then when you couple with that coagulopathy, which is basically just the body's ability to clot, and how to get the numbers to get that is INR, or international normalized ratio. And, you know, we know how to take a temp. We can get an INR in people. And basically the studies have been shown that if you bring a trauma patient in and they are hypothermic and they are coagulopathic, we talk about that whole lethal triad, which is obviously now the lethal diamond because we've introduced calcium to it because we're giving blood products. But basically just how easy it is to not only make someone hypothermic just from our treatments alone, but also how hypothermia really affects the mortality and morbidity. And you know, for you guys that are out there, one of the things that I bring up in the class, and it's just a part of it, but you know, we know that we have if we're talking about massive hemorrhage, we have a volume problem. So one of the things we would do as far as volume replacement goes is to give saline or lactated ringers. Now, if you're doing saline, on the grand scheme of things, believe it or not, saline at 0.9% sodium chloride is actually pretty acidic. So making somebody acidic is not good. We don't want that, which is why really everybody has moved more towards lactated ringers, which is more pH neutral. But I also usually pose the question when we're talking about that, you know, if it's the summertime and it's 85 degrees in your ambulance and you have all your lactated ringers there and you run this trauma patient and you start dumping fluids into them, well, you're not realizing the fact of, the ambient temperature is 85, so your fluids are 85, but the human body temperature is like 96. So just by infusing them, you're also dropping their temperature really significantly, so you're feeding that hypothermia problem. And that's one of those things, like, we should almost have IV fluids in warmers all of the time. And don't even, you know, if we're talking wintertime, most times those are kept outside. Even if they're kept inside, I don't know if your bays are heated or cooled, when I was with FDNY, I worked part-time in Jersey City as a paramedic. We were street corner assignments. So, the ambulance has the heat on. So at best, it's maybe 70 degrees in there. I would actually take the IV fluid bags and stick them on the defroster and just let them cook all shift long just to help combat that. Again, in the classes, guys, we kind of get into a deep dive on your treatments, your interventions, the body's normal physiology as far as its response to all of this, and kind of how it all plays into killing trauma patients. But yeah, Danny, any last things on that?
Crank the heat. I mean, my agency is real big on like we scoop and run. So I mean, that's a little context clue for anybody that's to do their own research. But we scoop and run any penetrating or perforating trauma. Now, I agree for like EMS transport, like when you can actually stay and play and work on your patient, crank that heat as much as you can. It's not really a consideration where I'm at because of how we operate. That being said, I mean, listen to you and Nick from Rant talk about hypothermia and how much that plays. That's really influenced even on the BLS level, like how I would try and treat somebody in an environment where I can't rapidly transport that person. I go back to the apartment building scenario or residential scenario. Keep your patient warm, dude. If you're comfortable, your patient's not.
Yeah, that's and that is preached all the time, and people forget that a whole bunch. And that's one of the things. So Attorney Element was asking, what do we carry for warming our patients in our kits for tactical responses, and that he's had terrible success with the ready heat blankets, up to a 50% fail. So I can tell you, me personally, Combat Medical, which is now Safeguard, we actually run their heat cell system, which is basically like a sewn together, stitched Mylar blanket sleeping bag that's a little bit thicker, and it actually has like 8 or 10 separate heat cells, so you can kind of activate as you go to regulate the temperature and how many zones you want activated at once. But they're also insanely expensive. They're like $1,000 a piece, I think. But that's the system we use, but it is important. And if Nick was on here, I wish he was. Nick is one of the other main Rant instructors. He's a flight medic, and he talks all the time about if you're flying a trauma patient out, which if you're in any, even remotely close to being a real environment, you're probably using aviation. And he goes into big time how the rotor wash with all that downdraft hyper cools people at an incredibly fast rate. So another really good thing to keep in mind. So yeah, Danny, anything further on that?
I mean, just food for thought. I mean, it's wintertime. I mean, we're all operating our day-to-day lives out in the cold weather. Hot hands, I would, at least on a basic level, I would keep a bunch of those handy. A little bit of medical tape. Start throwing them in your junctional areas while you're treating your patient. That can make a huge difference, I would say. I don't know how much I would actually recommend that officially, because now you have can you burn your patient? Yeah. But it is a consideration, right? Like if my partner goes down and I know we could deal with any aftermath later, I might stick a few of those in places he may not like, but it'll try and keep him comfortable enough for us to get him more definitive care, and you might have helped alleviate that problem. The Mylar blankets, I'm a fan of those. I mean, I use them a nice amount for different things. How effective are they?
So it's funny you mentioned the Mylar blankets. I don't want to go too down the rabbit hole here, but this is one of my one of my things. So again, the Mylar blankets are great. Everybody has them. They cost $2. They pack them really nice. It's fine. The commercials and the advertising on those absolutely drive me insane, because it's always some person in the middle of the woods that's freezing with like a Mylar blanket wrapped around them, which is great for advertising. But here's the important thing to remember with a Mylar blanket. The reason they work, the reason they are so effective is because not only are they hot, they keep you warm, they trap heat, but they're also a vapor barrier. So if you actually put that on somebody in the austere environment, in a sub-freezing environment, you wrap them in that, they are off-gassing, that vapor and liquid gets trapped on the inside of the blanket, it goes back onto them and freezes, making them colder and making your life miserable. So the Mylar blankets are great. However, you need an intermediate layer. So preferably if you have one of those, like if you're in an austere environment, you're going to deploy a Mylar blanket, fantastic. It'll keep them dry. If it's raining, whatever. You can use the thing as a shelter. But if you're using it for hypothermia purposes, you need to have preferably a wool blanket in between you and the casualty and the Mylar blanket. That way, their moisture, their off-gassing can travel through the wool blanket, hit the Mylar level, fall back onto them. Yes, it will get warm. Yes, it will get wet, but we all know wool maintains its thermal values even when it's wet. So that's kind of the be-all, end-all there, and that's why the Mylar blankets are so easily misunderstood and so just used wrongly that I jump on the topic when it presents itself.
I threw you the softball because I know we just recently we scratched on that one of the more recent combos. So,
awesome, yeah. Guys, so again, that was a lot. The first 60 seconds of medicine in a dynamic or tactical environment. But everything we were talking about on the grand scheme of things was really basic, and Danny used that word multiple times. It's basic. So,
movement, communication, and the beginning stages of March are like where your mindset should be, right? Get your patient off the X, and that could be any threat. Doesn't always have to be a two-way range somebody shoot at you. Get your patient off the X. Communicate to your additional resources. A quick report. Hey, I got a gunshot victim. I'm here. I got a car accident. I'm here. Start rolling me some backup, EMS, whatever. And then start your march algorithm. Those are, in 60 seconds, it seems like it's a lot. And it is when you start breaking it down into individual parts. But once that kicks off, those three things are going simultaneously, and it's going to have a huge impact on survivability in your patient.
Yeah. So, dude, that's just it. Like all up until this point, it's been so basic. So let's get into, and anyone who's been deployed with me or has deployed, especially to a wildfire, knows this is my selling point. I tell all the crews that I'm out with that basically the no one that I'm out there with, the reason you have me there, they're all basically hot shots, the guys I'm going out with. So no one there is dropping over from a heart attack. These are the most crazy in-shape guys you've ever met in your life. It's going to be a severe injury that we commonly see. So that I'm getting called for, whether it's a chainsaw accident, a tree strike, things like that. And the benefit that you get from having me there as a paramedic as opposed to an EMT is the issue of, or the ability to get pain meds or, IV started or advanced interventions. So let's get into that and let me know your thoughts on how all that additional treatment comes into play. And more importantly, to keep it on topic, how it relates to the first 60 seconds of tactical medicine.
You there? You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Go ahead.
Yeah, my bad. Let me ask you a question. Like, from an ALS standpoint, how quickly are you dropping pain management meds into your patient?
So you're saying from the tactical standpoint?
Or just in general, just from the ALS standpoint, even in like you're supplementing your smoke jumpers, you get through a chainsaw accident.
Oh, dude! So this last season, we were in when I was in Colorado in the aspen trees, which I didn't realize is, if you weren't familiar, the aspen trees are the largest, one of the largest organism in the world because it's one tree, it's all one root system, but they're extremely weak. And basically, so in the green, we had a tree strike on a guy. And again, I kind of pride myself on the fact of the reason you have a paramedic out with you is because I have the ability to treat your pain. So if you were in pretty much any significant pain whatsoever, I'm giving you pain meds. And I did. I gave him fentanyl. I'm like, dude, like there's no reason for you to be in pain. That's why I'm here. Let's take care of it.
How quickly did something like that happen?
Oh, dude, you're saying as far as the tree strike?
No, yeah, like in the that first 60 seconds model, you get there, you assess your patient, tourniquets applied, or whatever the case, whatever the intervention is on the front end. How quickly are you starting to push pain management meds to your patients?
So basically, so I was on a REMS team, so we're UTV based. You get a call on the radio because the crews are like, "Hey, our dude just got hit by a tree," And we weren't that far, but when you're driving a dozer line, especially in a UTV, it takes a little while to get there. But, within the first minute or two, we get there, we do the threat assessment, we do the assessment on him. No major bleeding, we're whole fine. Dude, what's going on? Dislocated shoulder, that looks painful. We stabilize, start a line, and I'm giving him pain meds because he tells me he's in pain. Dude, we got a bumpy ride out of here because we're on the side of a mountain, so let's make this as comfortable as we can be for it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I think the biggest thing is to kind of reiterate there is the fact that as far as pain medicine goes, I had said, like, we did the threat assessment, we did the assessment, then I'm getting into there. It's really, this video is entitled the first 60 seconds. All of that is second minute medicine. So if you're doing any of that in the first minute, I think you're doing something wrong. You need to win that first minute, whether it's a tourniquet, whether it's a chest seal, whether it's wound packing, what have you, and then you earn the right to the second minute to kind of go into a little bit more deeper. So I think it's important, or I think something that's also important to bring up, as we mentioned in when I did the last video, is that generally these we offer these high stress advanced level education classes. We're getting 20-year medics and cops, for that matter, telling us how it's some of the best and most challenging training they've ever been exposed to. And we also see a lot of initial failures when they're faced with medical problems. Medical problems in a stressful environment. So let's just talk real quick about why people fail, or why rescuers fail in the first 60 seconds.
I think it does come down to a lack of training and meaningful training. We all have to do our in-service refreshers for our respective, certifications, whether it's maintaining your police certification, your respective state, your EMS certifications. And it's easy to get into that institutional PowerPoint type mindset. Let's do the basics. Let's do the tourniquet rep once or twice, and okay, what time's lunch? That's a real problem. That's a real problem across the board. And I think we've discussed even the type of classes that are open enrollment, where we have people that are putting themselves through classes and their mindset versus maybe somebody who's there to check the box to maintain a certification. Initially, you'll see, especially like when we do our 2-day classes, a lot of their agencies send them there, and they're kind of like looking at their watches. What's the day going to be like? And then by the end of the first day, we're ready to break down. I mean, we've already kept them there the full run of class, and we have people that are staying behind. We're like, whoa, I'm not done yet. I have questions about this. I want to learn. To watch that switch is kind of cool for me, because a lot of things in real life, when you have people like we all work with those guys that are like, oh, I don't need a tourniquet. I don't need to carry extra radio battery, extra flashlight battery. They take certain things for granted because they don't have that mindset shift. So when something, oh shit, happens, and they realize, hey man, it's relying on you. It's your turn. You're the one people are looking to make a decision. I think that's why a lot of people freeze up. My own agency, we talk about like how close we are to trauma centers. One of the biggest shootouts in our city's history, 6 officers were hit. They were, I'm not even exaggerating, less than 2 city blocks away from one of the most premier trauma hospitals in the entire country. And the gunfight's happening. Officers are getting hit, and they're just like looking at the hospital going, it's right there. Yeah, it doesn't matter, dude. The bullets are still flying. It's up to you. It's up to your partner. Get that tourniquet on, suppressive, directed fire, I should say, and stop the threat. So it doesn't matter. You can see the hospital, but you can't get there.
Can't get there.
Imagine now it's your turn. Let's just say it's not even you that's hit. It's your partner. Now your partner's life, or that bystander that just was minding their business and got caught up in a spontaneous event, it's on you. Ready, set, go. What did you bring to the fight? What's on your person? What's your mindset going to be? What's your willingness to provide these interventions? How often do we see an active shooter event go on anywhere in the country, national media coverage, and what are officers doing? I got my gun. I'm walking around a parking lot with my gun out, while EMS is running around treating people.
The Boston Marathon bombing was the prime example of that.
Prime example.
100%. And so the terminal element said, when we were talking about having, the ALS capability versus the BLS capability, his comment was the additional experiences of a clinical intuition of a medic who tends to have more years in the field by virtue of length of time it takes to get a medic license. That's beneficial. And dude, that's I didn't even think of that as a benefit, but way back when, 22 years ago, when I got my medic, it was mandatory. You had to have 2 years as an EMT in a 911 system before you even applied to medic school. So, yeah, just I don't think it's so much true as of late because people are kind of they have these direct EMT to medic bridge courses, which is horribly scary. But no, that was a really good point as well. So. Yeah. So, and again, as far as the mistakes go, I already kind of talked about how people freeze, how the brain locks up and they fixate. And I think what really it boils down to is people focusing on one problem and ignoring the bigger threat.
Absolutely.
Dude, how many times have we seen in scenarios, people missing things on their March assessment and they just can't figure out why their patient is crashing because they didn't check the angular areas, or they even, left the victim to deal with a situation that on the grand scheme of things really isn't that important in the moment.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Or they overthink, and probably what kills them or messes them up the most is that, once again, kind of bring this back, is they try to do that, especially when we have like the rescue task force models. You have the EMS providers that are trying to do perfect medicine in an imperfect environment, and that just doesn't work.
Well, I mean, again, back to basics. Here we go, right? Even from like just what's your first thing in EMT school? Not even medic school, although I'm sure it's hashed over many times in medic school. Scene size up, right? Which goes into your safety and your patient assessment. How often do we see people when they're going up and checking their patient go, okay, he's bleeding from the leg, I put a tourniquet on. Like you said, they didn't check higher up in the groin and see that he's shot there too. And it's like, or you didn't roll him over and check for the exit wound. What goes in must come out, right? And again, it's basic. And I've been through enough of these trainings now where I catch myself going, or you catch it, and you're like, yo, dude, did you even think of, holy shit, I've done this so many times in real life. And in training, you get a little bit of stress induction. Guess what, dude? Sometimes you forget things. And it's okay, because that's what we're training for. But we're also training to save lives. So the mistakes you make in training are going to have real world consequences. So that is one thing we do get a lot sitting through the classes that you guys teach. I'm able to interact with the students a lot and watch them go, oh shit, I didn't think of it. And it goes back to that mindset of, we're done class for the day. We'll see you guys tomorrow for day 2. And they're like, no, I don't want to leave. I have more questions. You see that, like, that does, and this is before we even get into the major scenarios. I'm talking about when we do our classes, and it's the classroom setting, a lot of PowerPoint, that we get into some of the skill stations and the hands-on. We're not even in the scenario piece yet. And they're like, wait a minute. I never even thought when I'm packing a wound that I should alternate thumbs, because guess what? Blood is pouring out of somebody, right? Why are we packing a wound? It's arterial.
Yeah.
It goes in and you're looking for your other end. Guess what, dude? That's pushing out, right? So it's things that, like, I enjoy watching the students kind of go, oh man, I never thought of it that way. Then on day 2, when we start introducing them to the scenarios, what do we see? Cops got their gun out. It's like, no, dude, put that away. Bad guy's dead. Go save that person's life.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's huge. I've done it in real life, man. I remember I missed a gunshot wound in an armpit. It was at least, at the end of the day, he was a bad guy as well. He wound up getting arrested. That's usually our patient population, is also our prisoner population. But it's something that I took for granted because I couldn't figure out why he kept complaining of, essentially, it was tension pneumothorax. And had I just put a chest seal on, it would have resolved itself. So I'll tell you what I don't miss anymore. I don't miss going high up in the groin and pulling at the skin. Patient assessment is huge. It's huge. It'll solve a lot of your problems.
Listen, I like to, as you know, like I like to rag on, especially the medics and the EMS providers for having like trauma shears on them in the class, right? But come scenario time, we expose the importance of exposing the patient.
Trauma naked, baby.
You got to do it. Yeah. No, but listen. Lots of good points being brought up here. So would you say, or what are the good qualities or traits of the medics who actually get into this profession and excel and save lives? And what can these guys or girls do that, they're able to literally separate survivors from fatalities?
I go back to that. I mean, hot topic word is mindset. One of the best medics I ever met doing what I do. Dude he was a professional, and he took his job seriously. That mindset of like, this isn't just a job. This is a vocation. This is what I signed up to do. I'm going to be the best at whatever it is that I'm doing. And the job I'm referring to it turned out it was an overdose, and it turned into a full cardiac code, bunch of cool stuff going on. And I was in EMT school at the time, so I'm watching it. And he was able to do his job, direct the firefighters in the pit crew CPR. He was able to direct me in administering a bag valve mask. And it was just, he started intubating the dude, and it was just he was able to think 3 steps ahead and keep everybody on task. So it's that leadership quality of like, I give a shit about what I'm doing, and I want to help other people do it too. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't cocky. He was like, hey man, this is my time to shine, and everybody's going to play a role.
Yeah, well, it's term of emotional compartmentalization, dude. No doubt, right? We're the guys who survived through it all. That's true. No, and I kind of alluded this earlier on with as far as the big decisions go. I would say decisiveness, right? Those who understand simplicity, and really, the medics, the ones who save lives are the ones who act, not the ones who wait for the perfect conditions to form.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I do like what was just brought up as far as like medics with their clinical experience, being able to form like differential diagnoses and look at things from multiple perspectives, right?
Yep.
I get hung up on the trauma aspect of it because that's what I'm most familiar with. But trauma is only a small part of EMS, right? Being able to flip-flop between those skill sets within the skill set, so to speak. You know what I mean? When like you're at EMT school, what are you learning to do? You're learning to do a medical assessment and a trauma assessment. How do you bring those two together? Because you're looking at things that kill people, and how do you stop that from happening?
Yeah, dude. So yeah, no, that's just it. Exactly. And I think really, in reality, the key takeaway to this whole thing is that the first minute is completely unforgiving. It rewards preparation and punishes hesitation. If you win the first 60 seconds, you give the casualty a chance to survive the next 10 minutes. And as a medic, that's really the whole mission. So, dude, this was an awesome conversation. So for next week, we scratched the surface on it here. Let's do radio comms in a tactical medical environment, because that should be a fun one, especially for me to get into. And I just want to remind everyone, if you were interested in coming out to any of our trainings, we'll be teaching at the Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio SWAT conferences this year. We're also conducting classes, what's turning out to be regularly here in Maryland, at an incredible range facility. So if you're interested in that, or interested in picking up a Rant Strategies hat, t-shirt, hoodie, shoot me an email, taylor@rantstrategies.com or rich@rantstrategies.com, and we'll get you the info you need to help you with that. And, we'll see you on the next one. So with that, everyone, take care.